Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ron, and today we're going to be doing a bit of a different video. This is a bracket list, and I figured this would be kind of fun to do with the deep rock weapons. I might be doing this with the killing floor weapons as well, and this is just a face-off more or less, and to where I can kind of voice my opinions as to which one I would generally consider better. Now for this list in particular, I'm going to be assuming that these weapons are running no overclocks, but do have mods on them. I'm doing that for two reasons. One is that overclocks can really change the way a weapon works, and if you were to ask me, like, what is one of the worst overclocks for any given weapon, it could turn the gun into complete garbage, or not necessarily complete garbage, but very gimmicky, very difficult to use. And then if you pair it with its best overclock, it might turn it into a god tier weapon. So I feel like without overclocks is the fairest way to judge this, at least as of right now. If you guys want to see overclocks, maybe I'll do that in another video. So first up, we got the Thunderhead autocannon versus the Minigun. Now the autocannon has generally more spread and less accuracy than the Minigun. So I guess that'd be a point towards the Minigun. The Minigun doesn't start out particularly accurate, but it does get very accurate the more it fires. The Minigun can overheat, whereas the autocannon doesn't have that problem, but the autocannon does need to reload and it has a very long reload time. The Minigun never needs to reload, you just have all the ammo in it right away. The Minigun is generally better against single targets, whereas the autocannon is generally better against multiple targets. Without talking about overclocks, and just talking about the base weapons, both of these weapons are really solid options. This one's actually pretty difficult, but I think I would give it to the Minigun. Those are very strong weapons, and there is good arguments for either one, but I think the Minigun is what I would go with for a better overall weapon. Even though it is a little bit more specialized to large enemies, it can still kill a lot of small enemies. It can kill lots of enemies, no problem. So long as you don't overheat it, it should be good. And I think without the overclocks, it is a little bit better. Moving on, we have the Scouts weapons, which are the G2 and the M1000. The G2 is the assault rifle, the M1000 is the battle rifle. Now, again, pros and cons to these. The battle rifle is probably more of a general use weapon than the M1000 rifle. The M1000 does more damage per shot. It holds less shots, you get less shots. But you do have a sniper function, which makes it so you zoom in a little bit and you do more damage. That's at the cost of 2 bullets rather than 1. It does have some interesting modifications. Usually what I run with this is more ammunition and even higher damage so that I can use it somewhat as a designated sniper rifle or a designated marksman's rifle, but also to be used to spam fire if need be, so I can use it at that close to medium range. Whereas with the G2, since it's already an all-around pretty solid weapon, I generally just build it to be even, I guess, more solid than what it is, with more ammunition, more damage, more accuracy. It's already quite accurate. Both of these weapons are actually quite accurate. You can use them at really any range. The assault rifle is going to be better at close to medium range than the battle rifle is. The battle rifle is going to be better at medium to long range. Again, these weapons are pretty good in comparison to one another. They both fill different roles. If I was going to give one the edge over the other, I think I would give it to the M1000 though. Even though, like I said, the G2 is a solid all-around rifle, it's great. It's a great beginner's rifle, especially if you came from playing any other FPS game. You'll know exactly how to use it, no problem. The M1000 takes a little bit getting used to because of the sniper mode, but I feel like it's a little bit more, even though it is a little bit more specialized, I feel like that specialization does help it out quite a bit. So I think I'm going to give it to the M1000. So we have the Warthog semi-auto shotgun that Engineer has, as well as the Stubby SMG. Electric SMG that Engineer has. The way that I usually build the shotgun is for full auto rather than semi-auto, and for just more ammunition and the most damage I can get out of it. Sometimes I go with better spread so that it has a tighter pattern so you can more easily hit targets. I find that to be pretty useful, especially with this weapon because damage is a little bit inconsistent towards grunts at any sort of medium range. It's pretty good at close range, and at long range it's very difficult to hit anything effectively with this gun. Stubby, on the other hand, has some kind of strange builds. You can build it full damage, and it can do an okay amount of damage then. I don't think that that's one of Stubby's best builds, though. You can build it so that it's a elemental weapon, so that it's doing electricity more often and spreading electricity to more targets. That is not a bad build and probably one of the better overall builds for Stubby. Or you could build it just full ammunition where you have tons of ammo both in the clip and outside the gun so that you get resupplies. I guess less frequently, but you get more ammunition out of them. So there's a couple different ways to build it, whereas I find the Warthog, you really only build it a couple of ways, either with more accuracy or more damage. Stubby's usually better at a more general purpose playstyle, and I think it synergizes a little bit better with your turrets than the Warthog does, at least, you know, if we're not counting overclocks, which we aren't for this. But being able to use electricity on them so that your turrets can do more damage to them, so your teammates can do more damage to them. It's also generally better at medium range than the shotgun is. The shotgun is really only really useful at close range, or at least I should say it's really consistent at close range. At medium range, its consistency is kind of all over the place. And Stubby, even though it's not very accurate at medium to long range, at least it is fairly consistent at that close to medium range. So I think I'm going to give the edge to Stubby in this bracket. All right, then we've got the Driller's weapons here, which are the Cryo Cannon and the Crisper Flamethrower. Now, both of these weapons are also considered quite good weapons. Well, and it kind of depends on what you want to do with each of these. One can light things on fire and slow down enemies. The other one can freeze enemies, slowing them down and making them vulnerable to take more damage. Now, both of those are very good. The Flamethrower is generally going to last a little bit longer in terms of how much ammunition you get with it. I find that I need resupplies less often when I'm running it than I am the Cryo Cannon. The Cryo Cannon doesn't necessarily chew through ammo super fast or anything. It's just the Flamethrower I find to be a little bit more consistent. The Cryo Cannon also varies heavily based on the enemies that you're fighting. Larger enemies take longer to freeze and will be frozen for a less amount of time than smaller enemies, so that can kind of be an issue. You can kill enemies with the freeze of them, so you don't necessarily need to switch to another weapon to break them when they are frozen. You can just keep spraying them with this, or better yet, your allies could start shooting them and kill them much faster. Freezing enemies does give you a unique advantage with the Driller because you do have the throwing axes as well as the drills that you could build to do melee damage. And with melee damage, you could then have the passive perk Vampire. And Driller is generally the best class to be running Vampire with, at least with the Cryo Cannon, because you can freeze something, kill it with either of those, and it counts towards getting more health. So you do get more sustain with this. However, you do have more direct target damage with the Flamethrower. If you're fighting large things like Praetorians, Dreadnoughts, Oppressors, the Flamethrower is generally going to do better than the Cryo Cannon, unless you have a team that can instantly focus down the weak spot on any of those enemies. Overall, I would say that the Flamethrower is generally the better weapon, but the Cryo Cannon is generally the better tool. And it really depends on what loadout you're running then with Driller as to how good each of them are. I'm going to say without any overclocks, I think I'm going to give the slight edge to the Flamethrower, but it is very close. They are right neck and neck to one another, and I could easily see myself changing that opinion. So now moving on, we have the Minigun versus the M1000. And these are both quite a bit... these are both very different weapons. The Minigun has good single target damage. It actually has pretty good range. It does well against crowds. You get a lot of ammunition with it, and you never need to reload it. Now, downsides are that it does not start very accurate. You can overheat the Minigun, which can be a bad thing because then the Minigun is just out of commission. Those are about the two main problems with the Minigun. Now, the M1000 has higher base damage by quite a bit than the Minigun. You have the sniper mode, so you can snipe things from a long distance, and this is definitely going to beat the Minigun in terms of long range, especially accurate shooting. But you are going to be running down on ammo much faster than the Minigun. So the Minigun will generally have more ammunition than the M1000 most of the time. Depends on what you're running with Scout, and it depends on how often you're actually using the M1000 or what type of jobs you're using the M1000 for. So I think with this particular bracket, I'm going to give it to the Minigun. I think the Minigun is a generally better weapon than the M1000 against most enemies. Now, you could say against certain enemies, especially something like cave leeches or even grabbers at long range, the M1000 would definitely beat the Minigun, and I would agree with that. But there's so many instances where I believe the Minigun would generally do better. The Minigun would usually do better in a grunt swarm. The minigun would usually do better against Praetorians, usually do better against dreadnoughts. It kind of depends on your positioning too, because you can move around very easily with the M1000. But I think overall I'll give it to the minigun. And in this bracket we have Stubby versus the Flamethrower. And both of these do elemental damage, at least to some extent. Like I said, you can build Stubby a couple different ways. Stubby can do electric damage, which will cause enemies to take more damage over time. It will also slow them down, and it can be useful for the team. It's pretty good at close to medium range, which is exactly where the Flamethrower is really strong at too. The Flamethrower will do generally higher damage, as well as it can have a slowing effect on enemies, which is arguably as good, maybe not as good, as Stubby's electric damage. Kind of depends on how you want to look at it. The Flamethrower will not go through ammunition as fast as Stubby, though, either. You will have more of it. You do not have as long a range as Stubby unless you're building full flame length with the Flamethrower, which is usually not the way that I build it, but some people like it that way. So against flying enemies, Stubby will probably do better, assuming that you're not in a narrow cave, where the Flamethrower will do probably better just because it will do higher damage. Against things like grunt crowds, though, Flamethrower is definitely going to win. Against single target enemies like Praetorians, Oppressors, Dreadnoughts, the Flamethrower is definitely going to win there too. And I think that the Flamethrower wins this round. Alright, so that leads us to our final weapon showdown, which is the Minigun versus the Flamethrower. And this one is also going to be a pretty difficult one to pick from, because both of these weapons are very strong. The Minigun will do more single target damage than the Flamethrower usually. It depends on how long you can actually shoot something in its weak spot with the Minigun, as opposed to how long you can keep something on fire with the Flamethrower. And that's going to depend heavily on your playstyle, as well as your positioning and how well your team is moving around a certain target. So both these could potentially be doing about the same amount of damage per second. The Flamethrower is generally going to be better against crowds. You're going to be able to kill grunts, and especially swarmers, much easier with the Flamethrower than you are with the minigun. The minigun also has longer range. Now, as I said, the minigun is not accurate when it first starts shooting, but it does get accurate. So you can hit long range shots somewhat reliably with the minigun. The Flamethrower, on the other hand, does include status effects like slowing enemies down, as well as putting down flames that will do damage over time to enemies as they step across it. Both of these have abilities to fear enemies as well, if you're going with those particular ones. The minigun does have a chance to stun enemies, which can also be very useful, although it's a very short stun. That's why I really haven't brought it up to this point, but I'm trying to get into the very nitty-gritty details of these weapons. Both of these weapons are very good on ammo pickup, though. You're likely not going to be running through ammo incredibly fast with either one of them. I think overall, and what my gut is telling me is, I think I'm going to go with the Flamethrower. Even though I really love the minigun, I think the Flamethrower is generally a little bit better than the minigun in most missions. So I think this is where I'd put all of the weapons in terms of a bracket fight. This is a lot of fun to do. Tell me if you'd like to see the secondaries in Deep Rock, or if you'd like to see a bunch of the overclocks or anything like that go up against one another. That would be super fun. As well as if you'd like to see this for other games, such as like Killing Floor or any of the other games that we play. I think that could be a lot of fun to do. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. Tell me your thoughts about this. It's something that I just seen on the tier list maker that was also suggested as a bracket fight, or bracket something. Yeah, bracket fight. Thank you guys so very much for watching this. I really do appreciate it. If you guys are new here and you like this, be sure that you get subscribed. That way you get notifications whenever I post any of these videos. Tell me your thoughts and what your weapon ranking would be in the comments down below, as well as if you'd like to support the channel in other ways, you can by going down into the links in the description, either to my Patreon, my membership program with YouTube, or my merch store. All of those help the channel immensely. Thank you all for supporting the channel. This board will be updated at the end of each month for anybody that gets added to it, either through Patreon or through my membership program on YouTube. Thanks everybody, and I will talk to all of you guys next time. Till then, stay cool, and bye!